Almost up on Instagram. Excellent. Ready to go in 2 minutes. All right, here we go. Let's hop straight in. Welcome to the show, everyone. Good morning. Hello. I made it. Drive all night just to get back home, as the song says, and wanted dead or alive, I am with you this fine morning. That's right. I left the whiskey last night at about 1:20 in the morning. I had to pull over and nap for about an hour and then continued my journey. Got here about an hour and a half ago, and all because, A, we got a show, but B, because we got a show with our first guest, the Major, joining us right now. Major Ojeda, how are you, sir? The proprietor of TurnLeftPack.org, future office holder, so say I, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, I think you're right. I have made the decision that I'm definitely going to be running for office in 2026. I think it's important that we do so.
Yep.
You know, I just, it amazes me, and you know, like these people, how now they're just bending over backwards to try to make excuses for the things that Donald Trump is doing. You know, I mean, it's ugly. It is ugly.
Yeah, there's a curious story this morning that one of the maggot rioters that got pardoned by Trump was just rearrested on a gun charge. And it's not a new gun charge. It's a previous gun charge. For all the Trump's bullshit about there were no guns on January 6th, there absolutely were. Yeah. And it seems like what they're doing is that they are reclaiming some of the people that he let go. They're scooping them back up and putting them in jail on other stuff just to cover the fact that he released violent felons into the public. And again, a bunch of these people were turned in by their families, their significant others, because they were violent and dangerous already, and they went even further than this. This is this idea that these were a bunch of like persecuted Christian patriots was a bunch of garbage, and and a bunch of them are a threat to the community. And everybody around him was saying this. The Fraternal Order of Police came out and rebuked Trump for releasing these idiots, and they're quietly scooping some of them back up.
Yep. Yep. You're right. I'm trying to find the name here of one of the. It's his name was Jackson Reffitt,
Yeah.
or it's not. Yeah, Jackson Reffitt. He's the one who turned his father in.
Yes.
And he did the right thing. I mean, his father was absolutely, that guy. And now, I mean, how is that going to feel? How scared is that young man because he did the right thing?
Yeah.
To me, it kills me when they even JD Vance was like, no, we're not going to be letting people that did violence against the police. And then of course Donald Trump comes in and automatically swoops, boom, lets them all out.
Yep.
Didn't even deserve to be there.
Didn't vet any of them. Yeah.
No, none of them. Yeah. These people deserve to be there. But I'm going to tell you, this is what Donald Trump is doing. Donald Trump is basically trying to condition people that says as long as Donald Trump is in power, and you do things that maybe Donald Trump is okay with, if you go out and attack people that Donald Trump doesn't like, well, Donald Trump's got your back.
Right.
Have no fear. You'll not serve any time in jail. And that enables people, making them feel that they have that ability to do those things and get away with them.
I agree.
That's where we're at.
Yeah, I also think it's curious, and I think he's going to find out the hard way that there are a lot of Republicans out there who don't really have any interest in convicted felons who attack police officers and think the world is coming to an end and that it's flat and all the other crap. Most of these people, because a lot of these Jan 6ers that were violent against the police don't just believe one crazy thing, that Trump had the election stolen from him last time. They believe a lot of crazy stuff, and none of it went away just because he pardoned them. And now they're back at home or back in the neighborhood or back around, these states or these Republican congressional districts, getting their guns back. And as much as he might be okay with what they're doing, the Republicans in these districts aren't necessarily. And they're going to be secretly screaming around the halls of power and that may be very well. Daniel Ball was the other one that was arrested. His charges were dismissed, and then he was rearrested on Wednesday for pending federal gun charges, which is the first arrest initiated by the Trump-led Washington field office. So they're definitely, what they did was they did this big blanket 1,500, and then they're double dipping on anybody they think wasn't charged with the greater felony or something. And they figure they'll be able to put them away because the maggots will assume, Trump has their best interests at heart in the way that they would have attacked, I don't know, Merrick Garland's DOJ or something silly.
Yeah, there was actually there's a video of a guy actually on the scaffolding outside of the Capitol firing his pistol in the air. Yeah. This is what it is. This is what's to be expected. These people are going to do everything in their power to always try to defend Donald Trump or Elon Musk. They're all now saying that, oh, well, Elon Musk, you have to understand, he's got autism. That's why he did that salute, and he didn't really mean that. Okay, if we have to say, well, he's got autism, we can't really trust that he's going to not do the right thing.
Nazi salute.
Give Nazi salutes. But we will give this guy that's got autism that throws Nazi salutes multi-million-dollar contracts from the government.
And access to classified documents. What's to say his illness won't go further than that? Also, autism doesn't correlate to fascism, whatever. Autism doesn't correlate to anything specific, but it does not exclude it either. And it can cause hyperfocus. And hyperfocus, you could argue, I've said this before, that people using Ritalin and Adderall who do not need it can create what I would call chemical racism. They can, because again, if you have normal ADHD, your attention span is way open, your peripheral vision is blown out to the sides, and you take Ritalin or Adderall and it narrows it back to human normal, where most of us are. Most of us, this is where our focus is. We don't get too distracted. So if you have a bad issue, these drugs will move it there. If you don't, if you have relatively normal attention, it squeezes it down to horse blinders or laser focus, and that causes your brain to exclude anything that doesn't back up what you're believing. And that, my friends, is how racism occurs. That is how people exclude every story that goes against their theory about black people or goes against their theory about, immigrants or women or any of that stuff. And that's what all these guys are doing. All of these guys are gacked up on this stuff, and they're not prescribed it. They're using it off label. And Elon Musk is one of the worst. I would argue it would be impossible to actually diagnose that asshole, because I doubt he's never not on these drugs. On a myriad of them, he's fucking on. He allegedly takes ketamine and Adderall and all these things. So how do you get a baseline? And maybe it looks, his behavior at times looks similar to someone who's neurodivergent or has autism or Asperger's. Maybe he's just gacked out of his fucking skull.
Yeah,
all the time.
I'm gonna go with that one. I'm gonna go with that one.
Right. It's like fucking Gosar. Like Gosar, for everybody that looks at him, you're thinking maybe he has Parkinson's, or he has tardive dyskinesia caused by something else, or Tourette's, or a mixture of things. But he looks exactly like he takes Pervitin. He looks like a guy who takes the Nazi meth drug all the time. And he moves just like it. He has the same kind of fixations as the Nazis do. He talks just like them.
He sure enough acts like it. He votes like it.
That's right. And so the idea that he can, if he says, I would say he probably is ill. But if he says, nope, I've checked with my doctor and I'm not ill, I'm like, well, then you're on drugs and that's what's up. I'm just gonna, if you're not sick, I'm gonna assume that you're.
But to me, I mean, that you're spot on. And once again, Gosar is one of those who actually pushed that legislation that wants to end the $35 a month cap on insulin for elderly people. And look, I don't care who you are. Can you please explain? Can anybody please explain to me why that is legislation that needs to be pushed? Why are we saying that elderly people shouldn't have their insulin capped at $35? I mean, when we have elderly people that are barely, that we know are cutting their meds in half and doing things like that to survive, why would you push legislation? Anybody that puts their name on legislation like that, it tells you they are not good people. There's nothing good about them. Chip Roy, Andy Biggs, all of those guys were a part of this to try to kill this capability for elderly people. And I mean, this is going to be par for the course. They're going to go after everything that benefits citizens. And I'm going to tell you, are we going to get to that point where finally people wake up and realize that it's not the right versus the left, it's the top versus the bottom? And then if that's the case, what are we going to do about it? I mean, I'm at the point now where, it breaks my heart that so many people are going to be hurt, and that so many people are defending these people. They're literally attacking a bishop who just had the gall, the nerve to say, there are a lot of people in this country that actually, we want you to serve, we want you to succeed, but there's a lot of people in this country that are scared, and we hope that you don't make their fears come true. And Donald Trump goes outside when it was over and says, no, that wasn't a real good service. I mean,
well, he
there's
did.
No compassion.
I'm sure you noticed this too. He was even more cowardly than that, in that he said, "What did you think of it?
Yeah.
What did you think? Did you think it was good?" Because what he's trying to do is get other people's backing to soften his. He wanted to criticize it, and he wanted an excuse to do it. And when nobody would, he just went for it in the weakest way possible because he's a wuss. And he's just grinded on it ever since. And to imagine, like, grinding your teeth over a bishop at a prayer breakfast asking you, as the leader of the free world and one of the most powerful leaders on earth, to be merciful to people who didn't vote for you and who might be on the receiving end of some of your policies. It doesn't mean necessarily that you will not put them in jail. It doesn't mean necessarily that you will not kick some people out of the country. It might even, I don't know how it would pertain to, Besant is his Treasury Secretary, and he's gay and has kids. So I don't know quite where Trump's line will be only rich gays are protected or something. Is that the theory he's going to give? Yeah. Or only the men, which very well may be what he's talking about. Because, again, he was a huge fan of Roy Cohn. And Roy Cohn's famous quote, he died of AIDS, and Roy Cohn said, people are, somebody said to him, I think something to the order of like, people are going to say you were gay. What's your response to that? And he goes, people know, Roy Cohn wasn't gay. Roy Cohn was a straight man who had sex with boys. That was Roy Cohn's actual quote. That's what he wanted his legacy to be. And that was Trump's mentor. Yeah. In a lot of this stuff. And by the way, some people were asking what I was talking about with Pervitin. This is Pervitin. This is the drug that the Nazis were all on. There's the kratom stuff that the Houthis take. There's some version of meth that will basically help you turn your soldiers into killing machines. Blunts their emotions, allows them to stay awake for days on end, keeps them hyper-focused. And this is it. It should come as no shock. And this is when Heinrich Boll, the German writer, Nobel laureate, was a young man in his 20s. Like many able-bodied youths, he joined the Wehrmacht, on November 9th, while fighting in occupied Poland. Boll wrote to his parents back home in Cologne, "It's tough out here, and I hope you'll understand. I'm only able to write to you once every 2 or 4 days soon. Today I'm writing you mainly to ask for some Pervitin." Months later, he wrote, "Perhaps you could get me some more Pervitin so that I can have a backup supply." They were all downing this stuff every day. They were chewing it with their fucking cornflakes in the morning. There's a story of I want to say a Finnish soldier who had a stack of it because they had taken it from these Germans and they were all out of food and stuff, and he got separated from his unit and he took like a whole pack of it, like instead of just one pill, and he apparently went on a killing spree for 6 days, just wiping out Nazis. He killed an entire camp of Nazis. He once took over a house, like he stormed a house alone and took the house against the people that were inside, except no one had been there for 2 years, and he had dreamt the whole thing up, but he had literally been in this house for 48 hours fighting off the people in the house and burying them in this whole fucking fantasy because he was so gacked up. They found him like 3 days later just walking through he was running through the snow, no shoes on, just blistered feet, he was just chugging because he was going to go kill some more Germans, and it was because of this shit. He was just completely whacked out on it, and they were all on it. And eventually, it should come as no surprise, your nervous system will break down. It's just how it happens. It's why Hitler had his fucking hand wiggle. Everybody talks about how he maybe had Parkinson's and all that kind of shit. No. He was, it was all the shit he was getting. I mean, his doctors were giving him like the liquid version of it. He was, I don't know if you ever saw the Limitless, the movie about the smart drug. There's a Russian dude in it that he gives the guy some of the drug, or the guy gets it from him, and now he, instead of wanting to get paid back this loan he'd given him, he just wants more of the drug, and he's threatening to kill him if he doesn't give him this smart drug. And at the end, he's like, I'm out of pills, and he goes, you don't even know how to use it. I figured out after a while, because the guy was like a dumb thug, and now he's brilliant because he takes this smart drug. He liquefies it and he injects it. So that was his trick, was he would take half a pill and it would go farther and shit like that. So this guy was super smart when he came back to kill the main character. That's what Hitler was doing. That's where that comes from. Hitler was taking his Pervitin intravenously while the rest of these guys were taking it orally. Wow. Yeah. So, and again, the Houthis, Hezbollah, a lot of the Hamas guys are on that kratom drug, which is very similar. There's a lot of similarities to it. And when they're ready to fight, they all get gacked up on it. And it just fucking turns you into a monster. It's like all the stories. Remember all the stories about PCP in the 80s when it first came out? Okay, the reason there was all these stories about PCP turning people into these monsters because they never took it alone. It was either PCP with cocaine or PCP with early versions of meth, not the cooked meth that people smoked later, but the kind you ground up and you snorted. And so it was fucking Pervitin.
And all they gave me was malaria medication.
That's right. Yeah, our soldiers do not get that in the field, and that's a good thing. But anyway, so somebody was asking about that or didn't understand the term I was using. That's what I'm talking about. Pervitin is like the unwritten historical element of World War II. And you could argue that, it's what kept the Nazis on their feet against the Russians in winter longer than they should have, and made them more of a fighting force. In the same way that like Yunnan Baiyao, which is the Vietnamese white powder, which is an anticoagulant that they use that's just super powerful, that allowed like Viet Cong guys to just squirt the stuff into a bullet wound and it would just seal it shut like super glue, and they could go back to fighting.
Yeah, we actually have we have stuff. Not that you go back fighting, but we actually had stuff. It's called Quick Clot.
Yeah,
and you can spring. Now I tell you what, it's very 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 painful because it like heats up, and as soon as it hits anything moist, it heats up. It cauterizes your wounds. But I'll tell you what, a lot of people don't realize. We lost 58,000 plus people in Vietnam. If we wouldn't have had the capabilities that we have today, we would probably have been close to that in Iraq. A lot of people were injured. A lot of people were wounded, but because of the capabilities that we have today that they didn't have during Vietnam. I will tell you that anytime we were going, we'd go from point A to point B. And let's say we were halfway between point B and we come up, some vehicles started messing with us and we started squeezing triggers. Immediately, I would call Sheriff's Net. And I'm telling you, within 2 minutes, helicopters were circling us. And if we needed, we could have attack helicopters too. But if a person got hurt, the moment you picked up that net and said, we got a person, boom, this is where we are, the helicopter lands and takes that person. And within like 2-3 minutes, he's right there. They averaged like 95% success rate as long as they were able to get to the Baghdad ER within the first hour. And that was not a problem because, once again, the helicopters, they were constantly 24 hours a day, helicopters were flying up and down Route Tampa, which was the main route that went from daggone Kuwait all the way up to Tikrit. And that right there was constantly patrolled. Those are the reasons why we were able to save so many lives. In Vietnam, you had to basically get hold of a higher entity out there on a radio. And oh, by the way, these are older radios than what we have today. These are the old Prick 77 radios. And then, of course, they had to see your smoke through the triple canopy of jungle. Then they had to lower a jungle penetrator down through the jungle. And it was a lot of people in Vietnam died, not because they died right there because they got shot. They died because it was almost impossible to get them care before they bled out. And things like Quick Clot. We actually had a soldier that come back to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and the Golden Knights took him up there. The Golden Knights jumped with him on tandem and stuff. But he was the only survivor in a Humvee, and he lost both legs and one arm. And the thing is when something like that happens, for the most part, there's no way this guy's going to survive. He's bleeding profusely, and it's all over. But once again, Quick Clot and the ability for us to be able to get on the radio and have a medevac land within minutes, that's what saves so many people's lives.
Yeah. Well, and again, thank God time moves forward, specifically. Because this technology gets better and it gets easier to carry. It's closer to everybody. You don't have to, fly a lot of this stuff in. Everybody has part of it as their kit, in the same way that the Vietnamese had that Yunnan Baiyao as part of their. They all had it on them. So that's one of the reasons why it was so effective. Yeah. So I'm sure you like. One of Trump's things is this whole thing about how he is, and Phil's gonna be here in the second hour, so I know I'm gonna have to talk to him about this as well. But Zelensky has said that if the answer to the ceasefire is we can't join NATO, but we'll have peacekeepers here, which is the effect of being in NATO as long as they're there, because if the Russians attack and it kills European soldiers, that's the same as killing. That's the same as firing on the land. It's even worse. It's actually fucking worse. It's worse for American soldiers if we don't let Ukraine join NATO, because we have to send them there as human shields. Everybody has to send them there to stand there and wait for this dickhead to shoot at them, essentially. But Zelensky has said, we're not going to agree to any version of peacekeepers, and not joining NATO because of that, and Russia, retaining some of their territory, and us keeping Kursk if Americans aren't part of the peacekeeping force, if there aren't American service people. And that's where Trump's, he would have to commit to that to stop this, right? And it would be, and it's so simple. It is so fucking simple. Let them join NATO. Let them contribute to NATO. Let them be protected by this pact. And we don't have to fucking send anybody to stand there with guns to be effectively the flesh and blood version of Article 5.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're spot on. And then you got to think, why is it that you specifically don't want Ukraine to be a NATO country? Because if you're talking about China, one of the reasons why North Korea exists today, it's because China would much rather have North Korea on their border than the United States of America on their border.
Right.
The North Korea is the buffer between South Korea and China. And that makes a little sense. We don't want Americans to be right on our border. But, for Putin to try to say that with Ukraine, well, the Baltics are on your border, so it's not
Finland
and then, of course, Poland. I believe Poland touches some of the border.
Yeah. Finland has the biggest border with them, with Russia.
Yeah.
And they're a NATO country. End of fucking story. They have a bigger border than Ukraine does, connecting them to directly to Russian land, unseparated by water. It's just a straight fucking border. And the Finnish have fought the Russians before over this very thing. So the idea that somehow the Finnish can join and Putin just kind of shrugs it off, but the Ukrainians join and it's okay. World War III. Fuck that. It's just so odd.
I think that in the end, Russia wants to control their resources, because Ukraine is actually number 4 in the world when it comes to grain. Ukraine's got their stuff together. Ukraine has good land for crops. And I'm telling you, a lot of people don't realize I've flown over Siberia. And I'm telling you, it's a 4-hour flight just over Siberia. And you may see one or two little lights that shows that there's life down there. Other than that, it is nothing but an ice wasteland.
Yep.
And that's Russia. Russia's it's a cold place. I went to this summer. September, October. I went to Norway. I went to Sweden. I went to Finland. I'm going to tell you, I enjoyed some of the sights, but it was cold.
Yeah.
I don't like to be stepping outside in September and freezing my butt off.
Yeah.
But that was the case.
It's painful cold. It's like it's Chicago cold. Absolutely. Through the whole country there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, is that's Russia. Russia is that they don't have a lot of good land for crops. So that's what they want with Ukraine.
Well,
but
that's
at
you know
end
the
of day,
argument. The argument is does after Russia collapses for a third time, does it turn into Moscovia? Basically, a Moldova-sized country that makes up Moscow and St. Petersburg, and then China just grabs back the middle chunk of land that they took, that split the majority of the Russian territory in half, and then I don't know, the Mongolians take a big chunk, and then the North Koreans grab a slice, and that's it. That's all she wrote.
I honestly don't see how much longer Russia can continue this pace.
No.
With the Kyiv Independent every day puts out a list of the numbers.
Oh.
And I got a buddy of mine that sends me that screenshot every single day. And I mean, like, they lost 1,900 people.
Right.
We lost 2,400 people over the course of 20 years in Afghanistan. Russia is losing the equivalent of that every 2 days.
Yeah.
I mean, it's absolutely astronomical. And it's just like, my goodness, how can you continue? And then you look at the equipment. Like yesterday, they lost 135 wheeled vehicles. Those aren't just Humvees and, of course, their version of Humvees.
Yeah.
Those are every vehicle they have that's got wheels on them.
Right.
135 of them. And there was 127 UAVs. It was a couple of days ago. They fired like 80 some cruise missiles. Those are $6.5 million a pop. They're almost at the 10,000 tanks.
Yeah.
Tanks. 10,000 tank losses. I mean, this is Vladimir Putin will absolutely be forever known for this colossal.
Right. Fuck up. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This is horrible on his part.
So, how, I'm sure you remember this. Back in the 70s and early 80s, there was this kind of running joke about Russian leaders that if there was a report that they had the sniffles, it meant that they had collapsed from a massive heart attack. If it said that they were resting at the hospital after suffering a mild cardiac arrest, it meant they were in a coma. If they said they were in the hospital for an extended stay, it meant they'd been dead for 6 weeks. Like they would always, right? There was always this puffy, Baghdad Bob kind of doctor that would talk about how well they were doing and they're going to pull through. And they'd basically been cremated already. And there's an element to, people have been talking about the Russian economy as if it's been humming right along and the sanctions haven't affected it and all this kind of stuff. And granted, in a situation where they're still able to sell resources, their ability to gain funds in the middle of this thing hasn't been diminished as much as if it was completely wiped out. But it was definitely on a fuse. It's definitely burning. They know it, right? The Russians knew it. They're living off their savings. They're living off this battle defense fund that they kind of set up, the sovereign fund, to keep them to put them on a war footing and do all this shit. And all along, Putin has been going, we're fine. Everything's fine. It's awesome. No problem whatsoever. He's been saying this. Well, guess what? This week, he stopped lying. He said has started talking about it the same way the leader has the sniffles, which means he admits he has 4th stage cancer. He does these this round table every year where he takes questions from the public, right? It's like an AMA, an Ask Me Anything that they do. And this is the first one where he has admitted to the people, because he's afraid of the uprising, because people are getting pissed. They have 9.5% inflation. They have 22% interest rates. There is no effective private industry. Anybody who hasn't, who can run a business has either bugged the fuck out or been killed or been sent to the front lines to be killed. There is no one manning the store. like the partisan groups, the Ukrainians that can sabotage places can't keep ahead of the places that are just blowing up because Putin just like there's nobody there to run the safety valve at these big fucking factories and these gas plants. So you don't even have to drone them. They just fucking blow up. This is everywhere. Today over the last couple of days, Russian time bomb, Putin warned of seismically disruptive war debt. This is Vladimir Putin admits Russian inflation is an alarming signal. Is BRICS collapsing? Okay, first of all, BRICS would have to be a thing before it collapsed. It's all bullshit. I'm sorry to disappoint all of our tanky friends, but BRICS ain't happening. I mean, let's start with, you think these assholes are going to get together and agree on a crypto to peg to one of their currencies, and they're all going to agree whose currency, like the Brazilians are going to go, yeah, it's going to peg to our currency, right? And the Russians are going to, no, our currency. And the Indians are going to go, no, it'll be our currency. And the Chinese are going, no, it'll be ours. And nobody will listen to South Africa because they don't even know why the fuck they're in the initial numbers. You got to be fucking nuts to think these folks are going to agree. And then you know what their agreement was that at their first stage, that big 27 group meeting, you know what they came to? That they would peg their crypto, which would be their unifying currency, to the US dollar. Are you shitting me? They were going to make it a dollar coin, which means they would now be invested in making sure that the US dollar stays strong.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
Right?
Appreciate that.
It's so fucking bananas. Like, if our economy collapsed, so would the BRICS crypto. So why the fuck? That was their actual decision at that meeting. They were like, yeah, this is what we'll do. We'll do this.
Yeah, I don't, to me, a lot of people in that part of the world, let me tell you, they don't live exciting, happy lives.
Nope.
They exist. They exist. That's about as good as it gets. They survive.
Yeah.
I tell you, and if you don't believe me, then take some trips to Europe and go to those places that used to be behind the Iron Curtain. Because, I was amazed when I was in Sofia, Bulgaria, and we went to a themed restaurant that was basically behind the Iron Curtain type restaurant.
Huh.
And you saw all the different things. Like they had like a couple different TVs, and back then you basically, when you become an adult and you were given a place to stay, you could go and you could say, okay, I want that TV, I want that, I got 2 kids, I want that toy and that toy. And that was what you got. They were like, you had to pick between this group of TVs and these 3 different refrigerators, this washer and dryer. You got to choose, not even a dryer. You got to pick one of those for what you want, and you can have that because that's what we give you. But I mean, none of these people lived extravagant lives. They basically eked out a living. That was it, month to month, best you could get. Hopefully next month the government opens the faucet a little more. But life is not good in those places. No. And I'm going to tell you, he's lost almost 1 million. We're closing in.
Yes.
He's already lost over 825,000 troops. This is going to be his legacy, and it's not going to be a good one.
Right. I think Trump at his best they'll try to negotiate an end to it before that 1 million number gets hit. That's the favor he would do for Vladimir Putin, is like try to help him bring this to a close and save face. And because here's the interesting thing is the only thing Trump really has to offer Vladimir Putin in this situation is I can make it look like I'm making you stop when you would have won, and you can blame the United States and continue to attack us, and your own people won't blame you for the fuck up. It'll just be that America got a tough guy in there, and we just can't fight back against that. But I mean, that's the best they could do. But they've rejected every single one of Trump's offers so far, and half of them have basically been what Biden and them have been talking about. If it's even remotely possible, the Ukrainians have to be in on it, and they have to agree to it. And so you're limited anyways. These fucking guys on Channel 1, like, every time Trump brings up, some sort of ceasefire plan or when, this issue to chilling one, the British peacekeepers sent to Ukraine under a proposed Trump ceasefire agreement will be killed by Russians. That's what he's saying. Like, if the British or the French send peacekeepers, or the Europeans do, which is why, by the way, Zelensky goes, we need American peacekeepers here as well, or they're not going to honor it.
Yeah.
Right? And he just basically said, we'll just kill the peacekeepers. We don't give a fuck. Now, is he talking out of his ass? I don't know. Hard to say. Because, a rabid Wolverine backed up against a fucking wall, even with its claws pulled out and half its teeth, is still dangerous and septic if it's got rabies. So the danger they could implement is enormous. The reality is that if they tried to launch a nuclear strike, a massive one of any sort, the vast majority of their missiles would blow up in the silos, and some of them, the trigger mechanisms might even go off, nuking Russia. They know this. We know this. We saw that rocket that they sent blow up in the cylinder recently as they were test firing one of them without the nuclear head on it, and it never made it out of the fucking tube in the earth. And they, I've often said this, and Major, maybe you can speak to this, that in the sort of, I was quartermaster for my scout troop when we would go to the jamboree. And you would get sent to you'd go and you'd work at the quartermaster on behalf of your scout troop. And so you'd be in charge of doling out blankets, and everybody get, camping supplies, and everybody got especially because there was a lot of poor redneck kids, not everybody had a canteen. So if you didn't have a canteen, you'd be assigned one and all that stuff for the camping stuff. And then they would have a little thing where they would sell candy bars and stuff if kids had money with them, and that would pay for the jamboree next year or whatever. But that was part of what it was, our gig was the quartermaster there. And it was, we had a couple of kids who would eat the candy bars. And not say anything. And it was obvious. And they'd get in trouble later on because somebody's keeping track of the candy bars, and they're on the front end of everything. Like, they're always there. They're in the boxes on the fucking table, and they get sold. You'd be better off stealing canteens because nobody really knew how many we had, and some of them don't come back, and they just forgive it half the time, and it doesn't really matter. There are layers in a military of the stuff that you could probably grift on and sell out from under the military, and it's all the stuff you don't use that often. You couldn't do it with ammo for rifles because you're always practicing. It couldn't mortars and fucking claymores and mines and all that kind of stuff that they use for training and for securing military bases and stuff, right? You'd have to, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but you know where all that shit is, and you keep very good track of it because you need it all the time.
Yes.
But if something was like, we have a specialty piece of equipment and we never use it because it might be A, slightly obsolete, or B, too big for the job all the time, and it just kind of sits there gathering dust in case of emergency, if somebody was to sell the fucking fuel out of it, nobody would really notice. And if they did notice, they'd go, oh shit, there's no fuel in this thing. And then they just fill it and go because it'd be an emergency that called for this thing, right? So in China, they had this big scandal recently that all these rockets, these ballistic missiles they had, all had water in them instead of fuel because somebody had sold the fuel in them because they're not going to be launched. China's not going to launch these missiles at anybody. These guys know it. They're not going to get to this point where they're in open warfare with the West. It's a stupid idea, right? There's no reason why it would happen, right? I was a Weebelo, by the way, David, in the chat room. So she's like, I was a Weebelo. I was, absolutely. I was a Weebelo and a Cub Scout and a Boy Scout. But what happened with Russia is that once they realize we're never going to use our nukes, it's never going to reach that. And if it is, we only need a few of them to scare everybody, and we're all wiped out anyways. Doesn't fucking matter. They've got more aimed at us, and the U.S. keeps theirs up, and Israel has some, and China has some, and whatever. It'll just be fucking. It won't matter if it goes off. The whole we'll be dead from the drift if Pakistan and India openly starts a nuclear war with us. So what the fuck? Who cares? So they started selling the shit. They started selling the nuclear material to Iran under the table with Putin's permission. And then a good portion of the rocket systems, the guidance systems, all that shit, they just started selling it to China and other places to use for, their rocket systems or sending fucking low-res satellites into the sky, shit like that. And they just thought, nobody's going to look for this stuff. And they're right. They're not going to launch those things anytime soon. But now they ran a test on one of these things and they tried to fire it. And it blew up in the fucking cylinder because it's missing a bunch of parts.
Well, Russia's got a few issues that are very different than what we have here. In Russia, the budget, basically the general officer over top of this division in Russia,
right,
is basically given a blank check, or not a blank check, but he's given a certain amount of money. And basically it's like, okay, this money is what you need to use to buy equipment, for training your people. And that's about as much as eyes on as they have. Right. So what we found out is that these division commanders in Russia, they're like, well, why should I spend this much money and get these vehicles when I could spend half that money and get these, and I can put the other half in my pocket?
Yeah.
So these generals are robbing from Russia, and that's what they're doing. And now we're seeing the equipment falls apart. It's just all kinds of major issues here.
All the tires were flat on those transport vehicles.
Yeah. The tire tread immediately started falling off as soon as they invaded, because once again, there's no preventive maintenance checks and services, which is what we do in the military. For the United States military, this is how it works. Every piece of equipment that we have has to be serviced. If it's a vehicle, it has to be serviced every single week. You do PMCS. You have some equipment that you have to PMCS every month, but you have inspections on equipment. Every commander of every company has to inspect every single item that belongs to his company over the course of 1 year. So you break it down into monthly inspections, and when you send it out to the platoons and say, hey, these are the 10 things that the company commander is going to inspect this month, so you got to make sure they're ready. But now, as far as vehicles, as far as weapons, as far as gas masks, all that stuff gets PMCS'd every single week. Mm-hmm. And the accountability piece, let me tell you something. If something is missing in the United States military, if you are a company commander and you signed for all of this equipment, now once you get that equipment, then you sub-hand receipt it down. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, the commander won't be signed for anything, because everything will be passed down to the platoons, and their platoon leaders are signed for it, and they disseminate it to everybody else. Right. Make no mistake about it. Let something turn up missing that's big. Let a weapon go missing. Let a Humvee go missing. We had a battalion that sent one of their engineer pieces of equipment. A company commander sent one of their engineer pieces of equipment, and it was one of those pieces of equipment that took a while to fix. They forgot that it was in that shop. And at the end of the year, when this commander is getting ready to change out, he ended up getting a huge black eye on his record, because you're missing a whole entire vehicle. You have no clue. Now, they were able to find the vehicle, but that right there basically said that commander was not doing what he was supposed to do in keeping track of his equipment. You will lose your career in the United States military if you lose stuff, and it's completely different than what they have anywhere else. Our military is by far the greatest military to ever exist, and I'm going to tell you, it is important that all of our equipment is not only kept up, but it has to be on hand receipt, inspected all the time. I mean, you'll find a lot of your time in the military is having to inspect things. And I will tell you this, as a soldier, when you get all of your equipment, you can take your shit, you can put it in the pawn shop. You can, but make no mistake about it. When it's time for an inspection, because we make the soldiers go out there, lay out their sleeping bags, lay out all the, you got so many uniforms, you got this cold weather gear, this is your mop gear for chemical warfare. You got to go out there and lay that stuff out. And let me tell you something, let something be missing. And you will have to sign a hand receipt right now that says we're taking this out of your pay. If you sent all of your you put your daggone helmet in hock at the pawn shop, but we call for an inspection, before the end of the day, you're going to sign a hand receipt that's going to pay for that helmet. You can leave it in hock. We don't care because you just paid for that helmet.
Yep. And again, as a country that is a representative democracy where we have oversight by the Congress and they have the purse strings, again, as much as Trump wants to put Kegseth in front of in charge of the military as the SecDef or whatever, he's not going to undermine this part of it. Because he's not going to let that stack on his legacy. He wouldn't even know how to fuck it up. Like if he makes a fucking Pete Kegseth fucking crypto coin and makes money off of it, I give a shit. But he's not going to do what the Russian generals do and the Russian leaders of the military do, which is undermine the readiness of their soldiers who end up going out there with bullets that are, have cracked casings on them, don't have enough powder in them to actually fire properly. Like, Jesus Christ, the number, these North Koreans that they're sending out there are just fucking falling over in piles. I'm sure you've seen the footage that I've seen of just the dead North Korean soldiers that never had a fucking fighting chance.
They don't know how to fight. They don't know how to fight. And by the way, I was stationed in Korea and everybody knew. Everybody expects that North Koreans' claim is that if you mess with us, we're going to send 1 million rounds onto Seoul within the first 24 hours. Yeah, that may be true. But we also believe that about 85% of them are going to be duds because they've sat in a dark, dank cave since the Korean War.
Right.
And that's how it is. I mean, North Korea doesn't have, those people live a horrible life. And their military is not much better. But I'll tell you this. South Korean military, they can fight combined arms. But I'm going to tell you another thing, too. It's not fun to be in the South Korean military because they take it real seriously.
Right.
I'm going to tell you, to be a rock soldier with Republic of Korea, let me tell you something. Those sergeant majors in the South Korean military, they will put their hands on you, and often. If you're doing a ruck march and everybody's ahead of you and you're lagging back, that sergeant major will kick you in the side of your head and you will pick up. I mean, it is brutal. We have a thing called Katusa. It's the Korean augmentee to the United States Army, which basically says that in every one of our squads for our United States Army stationed in Korea, our units actually have about 2 Korean soldiers, Katusas, in our squads. Wow. They actually become part of our squads. They live with us. They train with us. Everything that we do, they do. And I'm going to tell you, the kids that become Katusas are actually from the families that have the ability to protect their kids. Right. Because let me tell you something. No Korean, it's tough to be in the Korean military. Right. Those guys, if you go to their quarters, they sleep at night, elbow to elbow, on a little mat with the pillow. They have about a 2-foot by 2-foot box that they can put all their stuff. Other than that, that's all they get. And they have so many years they have to serve. You got to serve a minimum of 2 years, and it is rough. So, if a Katusa doesn't clean their room, you want to make a Katusa clean his room? Tell him, hey, next time I come back here, if this room isn't spotless, I'm gonna send your ass back down to the South Korean military. They will absolutely spit shine that damn floor, that toilet seat, the windows, the mirrors, because they are scared to death to go down to the South Korean Army. But the reason why they're that tough is because they also know that at any given time, those jackaloons from the north could, start coming across the border, and we're going to have to fight to the death to keep our home. And that's how it is there. Yeah.
There was a question about, I don't know if you saw that, the But about you, what do you think about the people who refuse vaccines getting back in and with back pay? I'm just curious about that.
First off, let me tell you something. You have to understand that that is the dumbest shit I've ever seen. Because here's why: they got out because of the COVID vaccine. Folks, let me tell you something. They got out of the Army because they wanted out of the Army. Mm-hmm. It had really nothing to do with the COVID. The COVID thing just gave them an excuse to get out of the Army. Because let me tell you something. When you join the military, anybody who has ever served in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Space Force, National Guard, Army Reserves, doesn't matter. When you go through basic training, before you even meet your drill sergeants, you have to go to reception. Reception is where you go and they cut your hair, they size you up, they start issuing you your clothing, your dress uniform, your camos, all that stuff.
Right.
When you're going through that, on one day, you're going to walk into a room, and I'm going to tell you, you're going to have both, you're going to be in your brown T-shirt, both sleeves pulled up over your shoulders, and you pull your pants down about 3 inches below so you can get the top of your hips, and you're just going to walk through, and everybody, they're standing in a line. And they're like, boom, well, this is friggin' rubella. Boom, this is the flu shot. Boom, this is the blah, blah, blah. Boom, this is, you get like 15 shots right there. You get that big gamma globin shot they give you in the ass there and at Ranger School that makes you practically not even able to walk for 3 days. Now, you don't have a problem with that. You never bitched and griped about those. You never bitched and griped when you got stationed in Korea and you had to go through the anthrax shit. You never bitched and griped when we was going to Iraq and Afghanistan where we had to go through the smallpox shit where everybody got that nasty friggin' thing on their arm that scabbed up and stuff. We all had to go through that. But the COVID, that's the one that you said, no, I'm willing to get. The reason why you got out of the military is because your ass couldn't hack the military, and that was a good excuse. Now, the bad part about it is what's going to happen is those people now are going to go, yeah, I'll go back in, give me that back pay. They're going to get that back pay, and what are you going to do? They're going to go ahead and file for friggin' getting out of the military.
Right.
So basically, Donald Trump's just letting a bunch of these guys come back in, get a big chunk of money from our government, and then friggin' leave, exit stage left.
Right. Agreed. By the way, this is the current number. This is that we always look at. 822,030 as of yesterday. This is not including tonight's numbers, whatever they are, but 1,600 just in that last little bit. Like that. I mean, again, what, 58,000 in Vietnam, America lost. Like Russia lost, I want to say something like, I'm going to skate it, but
they lost 50 million people World War II.
Well, yeah, right. Well, that's exactly, but then again, that was, against Germany specifically more than any other force. And if it hadn't been for us, and because we did Lend-Lease with fucking Russia during that period. People forget, but like one of the reasons why they survived, it wasn't because Stalin was all fucking brilliant and the Germans were dumb for showing up in the fucking snow. They weren't. They just knew what the Russians had. They knew what materials they had, what army stuff they had. They didn't expect us to back them. They didn't, in the same way that they didn't expect us to come in and rescue Poland. Right. So like this idea that somehow like the Russians drove them back or that the Germans were just stupid. There was a whole lot of other history going on there. It drives me crazy how binary history gets after the fact. Right. Yeah. But look at that fucking number. Yeah. I mean, consider just the fucking volume of human beings.
And you know what? That's the thing that gets me is, Ukraine is actually kicking the shit out of our number one adversary. Yeah. And we've got people in America that are now against Ukraine. They're like supporting Russia. What the hell's wrong with you? I mean, how stupid can you be? The world begged Vladimir Putin, please do not invade the sovereign nation of Ukraine. They're not wanting to fight with you. Ukraine just wants to live their lives. Didn't matter. Because he thought he was going to roll through there in 3 days, take Ukraine, and then go straight into Moldova. I mean, and to me today, we've got people in America that are rooting for Vladimir Putin. I mean, that right there tells you that the stupidity that we have. I just wish that we had a nation that wasn't so easily duped with bullshit.
Right.
because that seems to be it. And once again, Donald Trump, his first 100 or the first 100 executive orders, he's not lowering groceries. He's not lowering the price of gas. I mean, he is hurting people. I mean, what benefits Americans by saying that we're no longer going to allow elderly people to be able to afford their insulin at $35 a cap? How evil do you have to be to push legislation to take that away from the elderly people?
Yeah,
but that's what we have. And those people are being championed. Paul Gosar, Andy Biggs, Lauren Boebert. These are people that are being championed, and they are the dumbest among us.
Right. It's stunning to me. The only logic I can think is Trump he wants to take credit for it. He knows Biden already did it. So undo it, redo it in a bill of your own, and then take credit for it. That seems to be like the only logic to the whole fucking thing. Because it's all just fucking madness. It's, I can think of no other logic for doing that. Except for, at this point, why didn't you just undo the VA Choice Act of 2014 and then make Republicans in the House pass it again so that it can have his signature on it, so he can pretend he's not lying about it the whole time.
Hey, look, let me tell you something. If he's saying that he's going to reduce the inflation to sub 3%. By all means, come on, let's go. Let's go there, Don. Let's do it. Let's see what you got. I'll accept that. I'll give you credit for that. I'll be more than happy to sing praises on things that he does that helps people. But that's not what his plan is. His plan is to hurt people. His plan is to do everything he can to shit on the middle class so that the billionaires will never have to pay a penny. He's going to turn around here and give the billionaires more money than they've ever had in their lives, while they're going to raise the taxes on the middle class. That's us. Mm-hmm. And once again, we've got people that aren't smart enough to realize they're going to raise your taxes. All of you poor Republicans, that's a friggin' oxymoron. There's no such thing as poor Republicans. They want your vote. They're going to tell you that you're Republican, but then they're going to do everything to hurt you. Whenever Donald Trump lies to you and tells you that he's going to lower prices and then tells you that he can't, because he got your vote. That should bother you. You said that on day one you were going to do this, this, and this, and you haven't. He has already lied about every damn thing, and now all he's trying to do is hey, I wasn't able to lower any prices or anything. A lot of people are dying because we made medicine now out of reach. But hey, Gulf of America.
Right. It is like. And again, I think you're going to see an increasing number of people who are going to wake up to this, that we're in that kind of mid zone, in the same way that, this idea that even the Gaza ceasefire, Israel's still doing raids in northern Gaza. It's not, that part hasn't changed. They're giving up some of the Israeli hostages, but a good portion of them have died over time because they made that choice. But the Houthis have said until all of it's implemented, they're not going to stop seizing ships. Like the idea that this is just, or that Ukraine's going to be over in 24 hours. Trump said yesterday he's still got half a day left because it's only, I don't know when, because he started at noon. He was thinking that the next day at noon isn't 24 hours. I think he thinks it's 12 hours from noon to noon every day.
Of course
For real.
He does.
Yeah, because he's that fucking stupid. Anyways, Major, I want to thank you for being on here. TurnLeftPack.org, and of course, Major Ojeda Live on Twitch and YouTube.
YouTube and Facebook.
YouTube and Facebook, beg your pardon. And please check it out, subscribe. And I always appreciate talking to you about these things, because I have, the information I gather on my own, and I have, a lot of it is academic because of circumstance. And it's nice to be able to, bounce it off you, especially in terms of, how certain military things work, to check in whether I've got the right idea about these things. But what we have seen strategically is that Trump seems to be jealous of Vladimir Putin, and Vladimir Putin's entire business model has been to basically embezzle from the Russian people for the last decade. And Xi Jinping is no different. And this is the wall that China's coming up against too. And we'll, Lord knows I'll have plenty to talk about in terms of that later this week as well. But thanks so much for coming on, Major. We'll see you next time.
Always a pleasure. Always enjoy being on your show, and stay safe, Phil. I see you down there, Airborne.
Yeah.
All right, man.
Thank
Thanks,
you, Major.
Major.
And then in here, there's Phil. Welcome to the show, Philip Bittner. And thanks again, Major. How are you this fine day? And I hope I'm not making you cold by wearing a tank top. I just came straight from Rock Show.
Oh, no, it's cold enough here. Enough here. It's cold and wet and windy and rainy and yicky, and I'm going to have a soup for dinner.
I think
Warm
that's
myself
wise.
up.
Yeah. So we were, obviously heard some of what the Major and I were talking about with this, but hitting like a million probably by March, April at the latest.
Yeah. That's the estimate. That's the springtime.
Yeah.
Is kind of the estimate. It won't matter. It won't change it. Well, it'll matter to the people whose lives are destroyed.
Right.
But it won't threaten Putin. Because again, it's empire. It's the Russians understand that if they lose Ukraine, they lose empire. And if they don't have empire, then who are they? And so unlike Afghanistan, which was all the way out, in the far, in Central Asia, far away from the bulk of the Russian population in the European part of Russia, that was like, well, why are we there?
Right.
And it eventually helped to bring down the Soviet Union. This is not that. This is right next door. This is existential threat. One walks away. One party is going to walk away and change for the better, or the perceived better, no matter what. And one party is going to walk away and change for the worse, one way or the other. They're locked in this battle. So, and this is another thing that Trump doesn't understand.
Right.
That he is not going to make Vladimir Putin quit. He's not, because Vladimir Putin can't quit. He cannot. Apparently, a proposal was put forward. Putin's already categorically rejected it.
Yeah.
Because he can't stop. He can't stop, and he can't win. He's in an absolute catch-22. He cannot win because he does not have the force to take a major city like Kiev and Odessa. And if he doesn't take Odessa and he doesn't change the leadership in Kiev, he loses the Black Sea, okay, which is integral to their sense of being able to project naval power. He's already lost Tartus in Syria, so he's got that.
Right.
The Baltic Sea Fleet is now bottled up in what's being referred to as a NATO lake, because Finland and Norway have joined NATO, and they've boxed them in there. So in one fell swoop, he's lost two of his main fleets are now compromised, the Black and the Baltic, and he's lost a third facility for refit and refuel to get to the Med. This is freaking disastrous for him. It is. We're not on the radio. This is fucking disastrous for him. This is, he cannot move forward, but he cannot quit, because even if he quits with the lines as they are now, he's not going to be able to sell this to the Russian people that it's a success. I am in disagreement with some of my knowledgeable Ukrainian friends, but I really do think that not even Putin can sell this to the Russian people unless they're willfully ignorant about it and they fear a Putin-less situation, which is entirely possible. He could survive it for fear of, well, what happens if we do remove Putin? The Russian people themselves might find themselves in the catch-22.
Right.
But Trump isn't going to finish this war. He's not going to influence Putin. I don't think he's going to influence Zelensky. Zelensky's a guy who has constant threat of assassination going on.
Right.
Zelensky's a guy who, when tanks were at the gates of this city, knowing full well what would happen if they captured him, said, "Nope, I'm not leaving." And he walked out onto the square, the central square in Kiev, and said, "We're here. The head of the army's here. The head of the foreign service is here. The cabinet is here. We're not going to." You think he's going to run scared from Trump?
Right.
Give me a fucking break.
Right.
And the Europeans are ratcheting up, and they do have enough arms to fight for quite some time. I conducted an interview today with our guest for this week, and I don't want to spoil who it is quite yet, but I'll tell you on Saturday,
Okay.
or I'll put up a thumbnail on Friday. And we were discussing this, and we discussed the possibility of some sort of like collapse in the Ukrainian military, or a breakthrough situation where Russia, dives deep into Ukrainian territory, sweeps around, encirclement, all the rest of it. I don't think they have it in them. I really don't. And also, all the doom spreaders and the what I call the scrimmage line boys, which, by the way, at some point we should really have a serious conversation about this scrimmage line. These guys who do open source intel, and they look at maps and they go, "Oh, I know what's happening."
Right.
You got to go. You got to go out there. You got to go on the ground. I've been to Donbass, and we've discussed this in the past, you and I. Donbass is long stretches of low sloping fields, interspersed with hedgerows, and then the same thing again, and the same thing again, and the same. It's Pickett's charge.
Yeah.
Time after time after time, and they will grind up the Russians. Doesn't mean they'll not lose territory, but they will make Russia pay for every inch that they get. And then you fall back ultimately. So then you fall, let's say if they're going to try and break out, let's say the Russians are going to try and break out and go, I should have warned you, we should have gotten a map, north and west to get up and over to Kiev, past the river, because they don't want to do a river crossing. Every time they try and do a river crossing, they get their asses handed to them. But they could go up to Kharkiv and then cut across to Kiev, because you can't leave Kharkiv in your rear if you're going to go for Kiev, right?
Right.
Same situation with Odessa, down in the south, along the Black Sea coast. You can't, and there you would have to do a river crossing, but you'd have to go through a city of Kherson to get to Odessa. And I don't think they have the capacity to take a city built for millions of people. They struggle taking cities for like 20,000 people, or 75,000 people, maybe at their peak. I mean, the biggest thing they were able to grab so far and hold to this day is Mariupol, and the Ukrainians slaughtered Russians in Mariupol for months and months and months. It's the reason why Mariupol is held in such high regard in Ukraine, and why so many Ukrainians want the people of Mariupol to be able to return to their home, because of their sacrifice, bogging down the Russian army at the very beginning of this war and grinding them down for months and fixing them in place. They can't do another Mariupol. There's a town. So there's a town, even if right now they're surrounding a town called Pakrovsk, and there's still the battle for Chasiv Yar. And both of those places, I think, eventually will probably fall to the Russians. But then eventually, and then there's a couple of other towns along the way, but eventually you get to a town called Kramatorsk. And I have been to Kramatorsk many, many times. I don't know what the population of Kramatorsk is built for, but I'm betting it's around 100,000 would be my guess. But I'm terrible with these kind of things. More importantly, I've been to, so I tell you about the sloping ground of Donbass, that they're gonna lose. The Russians are gonna lose people every single inch. It's gonna be disgusting, awful for them. Not that I care. But eventually they could get to this town Kramatorsk, which is referred to as the gateway to Donbass. But it's a city about the size of Mariupol once again, and that you're going to lose Russia. If you're Russia, you're going to lose another 150,000 casualties,
Right.
200,000 casualties
Yeah.
trying to take Kramatorsk.
Well, and,
Now, if he
yeah.
takes Kramatorsk, he could try and sell that as I've liberated Donbass, and the Russians might swallow it. And I'll just finish with this: is that though, um, I've also been to Kramatorsk as well as the fields of Donbass. Kramatorsk is a factory town. There used to be a tractor factory there, and it's a coal industry town. It is built like a fortress, and that's before the 3 years that have gone on where Ukraine has been constantly digging in and reinforcing and preparing defenses and all the rest of it because they knew where Russia was going to come. Putin will have to have a third, if not a fourth, mobilization before he can even consider taking
Right.
another city like Kharkiv or Kherson, much less Odessa and Kiev. And without Odessa and Kiev, he cannot win this war, and it's just all for nothing.
Yeah. So let me real quick. I'm going to switch over to this, and then I'll swap out. I need to put in
Is this
your
the arrest?
Yeah. No. This is this guy General Sobolev, and Sobolev. Hold on. I just want to swap out the name on here so I can get you in here properly. But guest one. Does I do? There you go. This guy Sobolev is a Russian general, and they questioned him in the State Duma about what he think would happen with Trump, and he said he expects nothing good from Trump. He's going to take care of Canada and Greenland now, which means all this blather is about actually more military bases in Greenland and Canada. That's what this is all really about. And he said it was about time we should bomb the Americans. That's a general. That's not some rando dude. I mean, they're all drunks, but whatever. But the dude, he's wearing the uniform, so you have to take what he's saying seriously to some degree, right? And the dude is like, he's basically going, yeah, Trump's going to offer us a bunch of bullshit. None of it's going to work. Fuck him, and we should probably start bombing the Americans. Which they're not going to do, but like it's just,
No, of course not.
Yeah, but
They don't have to. But
right,
yeah. Well, they don't have to. Their information warfare and their psychological warfare techniques are working just fine in America.
yeah,
We are at one another's throats in no small part. Now we got to own it. We have agency. We are
right,
but they are definitely a contributing factor to the division in the United States. I mean, once you learn what they do in these ops, they're run by the military. That's something we should also remember.
right,
So it's not like, okay, so they have the equivalent of the FBI, for example. Not a perfect one-to-one example, but so they've got their version of the FBI.
yeah,
And the FBI does investigate and pursue foreign nationals intending harm to the United States.
right,
But in a law enforcement capacity, what we are looking at, it's not even the CIA that we're looking at coming out of Russia. It is military intelligence. It's the SVR. Sluzhba. Well, I've forgotten what the Russian is for it, but it's the military service. Sluzhba Voyenny. Oh, anyhow, that's going to bother me later. But anyhow, we are being attacked by their military, not by their spy services, although they are included as well, and certainly not by their kind of law enforcement.
right,
And that's a reason. There's a reason why it is their military intelligence unit that is conducting all these ops against us, because they considered themselves at war with us
right.
already. I mean, and this is another thing that I wish more Americans were aware of.
Hmm.
And I'm very careful when I say this, but I do mean what I say when I say we're at war with Russia. We are
Yeah.
currently at a state of war with Russia,
Right.
not because we are at war, but because they are at war with us and
Right.
they are acting accordingly.
Yeah.
If
And
you're
they
a
have for a
nation and
long
you
time
believe you're at
before,
war,
and
and they have for a
it was a long
long
time
time,
before shit started in Ukraine.
yeah, yes,
It's part and parcel to
100%,
it.
yeah. And I think we need to wake up to this fact. Of course, it'll have to be done by the citizenry because Trump is never going to admit this.
Hmm.
But we are currently at a state of war with Russia because they are in a state of war with us.
Hmm.
And nobody wants this, but we better start acting more accordingly. And I think the Europeans are actually. The Europeans, I think there's been a series of events that have happened recently where the Europeans are like, we have to be more aggressive in our defense. I mean, right now
Right.
there is a Russian spy ship in the English Channel that is being shadowed by Her Majesty's Navy.
Right.
There are stop and inspect plans being drawn up. I don't think they've been initiated yet in the Gulf of Finland
Right.
after that Chinese ship, or was it Chinese or Shanghai or I
Yeah.
forget, that dragged the cable
Yeah. It was a
between
Chinese. It was a
that broke
Chinese
the
ship.
cable between.
Yep.
It was a Chinese ship, yeah. The Finns are furious about that, and
Yeah.
they are, and the other Scandinavian nations are like, we got to start dismantling what's called Russia's shadow fleet, which is the stuff that they use to break the sanctions. But
Yeah.
look, the Europeans are waking up also because they recognize that Trump is is gonna
Yeah.
he's he's gonna mess it all up. He is going to be an unreliable partner for the next 4 years, and Europeans are
To say the very least.
sadly.
But again, he's also they don't trust him in the same way that okay. So Project 2025. One of the reasons why that existed was because Republicans did not trust Trump to stick to to the plan. They really were like,
Mhm.
this motherfucker will just repeat whatever the last person that whispers in his ear says. And he's such a dough-headed dipshit. He's going to just, if he thinks he can curry favor with a piece of ass around him, he's going to do it. No matter what. And he proved it to them with the debt ceiling bullshit right before he was sworn in. He used all of his fucking cred after having just won the election to try and make Mike Johnson and the Republicans pass a bill that would eliminate the debt ceiling forever so that he could just spend all he fucking wants to, when they had all run as fiscal hawks. All of them. I mean, the whole fucking Doge thing is under the illusion that Republicans are actually going to clear all this shit, and they're gonna be the party of like, all right, we got to really knuckle down and pinch pennies. We got to miserly, roll back all this ridiculous spending. And this asshole comes in and says, scuttle shut down the government if they won't get rid of the debt ceiling, which is not a priority, to the point where he wants to primary Chip Roy over it. Like it's and so the Project 2025 guys were absolutely right to give this asshole a coloring book so that he could he could paint by numbers inside there, because they don't trust him to do and I think the Russians and the Chinese are in the same fucking boat. I think he does have value for America as a wild card right now because he's totally unreliable to everyone, even his alleged handlers. And again, for those that don't know, this is what Phil was kind of referencing here. That there have been these Chinese ships that were cutting data cables, basically trying to sever connection between the United States and see if it was possible to do. This is like a dry run, I would argue. That the goal was not to get rid of it now, or be that successful, just to see what it would take and if it was possible. And in the same way that There is a concern about the Panama Canal, which is where Trump says China controls the Panama Canal because he's a dipshit. But what the reality is that Chinese companies have been hired to run the entry and exit ports on the Panama Canal. And because all companies of that measure are owned 51% by the CCP, if they decided to attack Taiwan, one of the countermeasures they would do is just shut down those ports, wreck everything, and have those guys leave their post. And so it would tacitly shut down the Panama Canal at the control of the Chinese government. Does it mean they would sit there and fight everybody with guns like an old-fashioned war? No. They would just sabotage the whole fucking thing. It wouldn't take much to wreck the locks, and they would just leave. And if they're already going to pick a fight on that scale anyways, there's no skin off their fucking nose. And they know we're going to shut the strait that goes through the South China Seas that they rely on for 80% of their food. So if they were going to do it, they'll do it. And that's what it's there for.
If it comes to that, the 82nd Airborne is there, or the 101st or something is there, and we just, we take it back.
We just open it. We just take it. Right. Yeah. With the help of the Panamanians, by the way.
If it comes to that, and then also we don't need the whole Greenland thing. We don't need to, all we have to do is go to the Danes and say, hey, we'd like to expand our military base in Greenland, and the Danish would probably end up saying, okay, there might be some carrot and stick and all the rest of it, but it's just, it's divide and conquer. It's constantly divide and conquer. So, I mean, that's what there's concern about. I mean, did you see his tweet, by the way? His tweet today?
Whose?
Just within
Trump's?
The orange one. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Where
I don't
want to hurt Russia.
Huh?
Yeah, no, fair enough. But let me see if I can grab this for you, if you're so inclined. It's embarrassing. Okay, right. There it is. Let me see if I can send it to you. I don't know if you even want to show it, but
I'll provide it. I'm not looking to hurt Russia, is what you're talking about? That statement?
Yeah. That whole thing.
Yeah. So
that whole thing. Have you got that?
Yeah. Well, it's I guess from his shitter account.
I guess.
Sharing a post on social media on Truth Social, which he copies and pastes it on other stuff. I'm not looking to hurt Russia. I love the Russian people and always had a very good relationship with President Putin. And this, despite the radical left's Russia hoax, we must never forget that Russia helped us win the Second World War. Okay. Losing almost 60 million lives in the process. All of that being said, I'm going to do Russia a favor. Oh, I see. There you go. You're sharing the image with me. Yeah. I will, let's see. I know what I can do. I'll copy this and then copy this.
All that being said, so he says, he goes on about the Second World War, which is just incredible. 60 million lives, they helped us win, even though they lost 60 million lives. Well, no, that was the Soviet Union, not Russia. There are millions of Ukrainians, Georgians, Belarusians, people from the Central Asian republics in the USSR.
Right.
Anyhow, all of that being said, I'm going to do Russia, whose economy is falling, and President Putin a very big favor, in all caps. Yeah. Settle now and stop, in all caps,
this ridiculous
war. It's only going to get worse. If we don't make a quote-unquote deal, and soon, I have no other choice to put high levels of taxes, tariffs, and sanctions on anything being sold by Russia to the United States. Motherfucker, there are sanctions on. We shouldn't be buying anything from Russia.
Also, and we aren't.
By and large aren't. I'm sure there's some stuff that's been exempted. I know that, like oil, had been passing through here until January 1st because of an agreement, a trade deal that was made. So, they've been able to sneak around sanctions, but they should. This idiot is saying, I'm going to slap more on you. Well, that's great. Should have been done anyhow. Let's get this war, which never would have started if I were president. This is his
Right.
mantra that he likes to say
Right.
over with.
Such bullshit.
Complete lack of understanding of what this war is and how this. I mean, I've spoken to people repeatedly who said Putin didn't care. He was always going to do this. He was always going to take back Ukraine by force. He had no intention of doing any kind of negotiation or any kind of. He always intended to forcibly take back Ukraine. And then it's time to quote unquote make a deal. No more lives should be lost. Spare me your crocodile tears.
Yeah, right.
Would be my response.
They
you don't give a shit about Ukraine,
right? Let me see. I'll bring up an article. I'll tell you exactly why. Yeah, you want to know? Yeah, he's fucking stupid. You want to know why Russia invaded Ukraine more than I mean, there's several reasons, territorial and whatever else. But this is the reason. This is if they didn't do it now, he's never going to be able to because they're aging too fast, and they'll never have enough young people to conduct a military excursion like this ever again if they don't claim Ukraine and start fucking Ukrainians and making more Russian-looking people. That's what this is. He doesn't want fucking Chechens. He doesn't count Dagestanis and fucking Tajikistanis and fucking Armenians. He doesn't consider those Russians. This is a racist war of reclamation of a genetic line that he's running out of fucking people. If they don't borrow the youth of Ukraine, which by the way ballooned compared to Russia's because of the freedoms they enjoyed, especially since 2014, that they've been living, a normal, as it were, European existence, and so their population's done okay, and that's largely because of that it's just a better way to live. And Russians have just stopped fucking for all kinds of. I mean, I don't know if it's vodka dick or just doom and gloom, but or just an aging population drop off. But that's why they're stealing kids. That's why they're they are. This is a war of genetic acquisition and farmland. Like, yes, the natural gas pipelines going across there, that's for money, of course. But the wheat fields and the human crop, that's why they started this. And they didn't have a choice when to do it. It didn't matter who the fuck was president. It's why it started in 2014, because they're looking at this timeline. They know better than we do. That we probably have a rosier view of their numbers than they do. Same with China.
I mean, their death rate is larger than their birth rate, and that's unsustainable. I mean, you talk about, people criticize the government in Kiev because they've been reluctant to mobilize men of kind of the 18 to 25 range. Now they have adopted it, and they are mobilizing young, but people have to understand what was happening in this country 18 to 25 years ago, and it was the birth rate here was miserable because there was no future for Ukraine. That they didn't see a future where they wanted to build a family. That changed, and families and the demographics, as Ukraine goes into the future, there will be younger men who would perhaps, that demographic is going to change. But right now, Ukraine's demographics are such that there are more guys in their 40s, available, their mid 30s to kind of to 50, and these guys, there are more of them because of the development of this country post-Soviet Union, and not also because those guys remember the Soviet Union and they remember what it was like,
and don't want to go through it again.
They don't have the 20-year-olds to spare in Ukraine, and Russia's going to find itself in the same situation in 20 years down the road because their birth rate sucks. And their death rate is high because the men drink themselves to death, literally. I mean, there's a reason why that stereotype exists, because it's true.
And China, their bestest buddy, has an even worse version of it because it's more striking. The idea was that China was supposed to hit peak population somewhere around 2027, 2028. That was the idea, and that their decline would be relatively slow because they allegedly had all these systems in place to protect people and a healthcare system and stuff, which is all bullshit. And they know it, and everybody knows it. I don't know why they don't speak openly. I think they're just trying not to insult the Chinese government because people have to play nice if they have factories over there. That's it. Everybody's just tiptoeing around this stuff. But if you speak honestly about it, you can solve a problem. And they haven't been willing to do it. They reached peak population in 2014. The drop started then. It's not gonna start in 2 years. It started nearly a decade ago. Like a little over a decade ago. People don't. And this is a huge aspect of part of why to get back Taiwan, because Taiwanese people are Chinese, and there's a lot of healthy, attractive women there. They didn't have the one-child policy in Taiwan. They didn't get rid of all their girls. They educated them. And so you think they need this fucking island, and like you think the chip factories will stay? Like you don't think TSMC has a deal with the United States that if China attacks, they're supposed to destroy all the chip fabs right there and then? Of course they do, and they would be dumb not to do it. So what? China's going to roll over there, get the chip fab machines, and start making super chips all of a sudden? It's absurd. It is just like, and this is, I mean, it's fucking bad. They have been, and again, they know it. Everybody knows it. 2023 saw the 7th consecutive year of declining births, despite the relaxation of China's one-child policy to allow 2 children in 2016 and 3 in 2021, with the fertility rate falling to birth expected per woman's lifetime far below the 2.1 replacement needed to sustain a population. Now, in the United States, by the way, this is such a bullshit number. The United States is not experiencing a drop in our birth rate the same way. Ours is going down like everybody's is going down because of the baby boomer generation. The follow-on to World War II, there was a lot of babies made worldwide because I would call it the Bretton Woods baby boom. That when the United States decided, right, through the Navy, we're going to police the sea lanes of the world, and food and goods started coming and going from everywhere in the world. Everywhere there was 10 people, there are now 65. Everywhere there's 65, there's now a couple of hundred. Everywhere there are a few hundred, there were a few thousand now. And that's what happened because of Bretton Woods. If we roll that back, the population will drop. I've said this about the whole and oil as well is a big part of this. Peak oil has passed. Greg is right in our chat room. But if we shut off oil, we stop tomorrow, like the activists who throw shit on paintings want us to do, you'd have 1 billion people dead in 8 months because you wouldn't be able to get food and goods to them anymore because there is not a substructure of electric vehicles or solar systems enough to sustain the budging on 9 billion people on the earth. It just is. It doesn't exist. You shut it off, they're dead. We'll make it through. The West will make it through. We could lump through. We could have fucking electric cars online and electric trucks and trains would kick in and we'd find some way to make do with the oil that we make in the country that's already, like even if you cut it off, we would transition. It would be painful, but it wouldn't be anywhere near just the massive piles of bodies that would happen in South America, that would happen in Africa, that would happen in the Middle East and Asia. You gotta. This is a drug, and if you don't wean the world off of it, you'll have the heroin addict die of liver failure and
System
heart
shock.
attack. Yeah. And like China, like they had this system. They were like, we'll be the factory of the world until such time as we have made enough shit, and then we're going to close up shop, build a wall around ourselves, and fuck everybody. The problem is they import 80% of their food and 85% of their energy. Their fucking coal mines that they keep making keep flooding. There's giant toxic lakes now full of coal sludge because they don't mitigate. Like, it's so fucking maddening. Like, they built two of the biggest coal mines in the world. They dug them. They made these giant strip mine holes in the ground instead of digging tunnels and venting the tunnels out. They just dug straight like blocks down into the ground and like you almost see like when they do mountaintop excavation where they take it down in stages. They did that going inward and they turned it into a fucking swimming pool. And then the coal dust in the water leached into the farmland around the area, wiping out all the arable farmland for 100 miles. It's just like, and nobody thought this is what happens when you don't have any regulations. It's just so fucking crazy. And again,
there's a similar story in the history of the USSR, but when you don't have a regulatory body and you're only looking for immediate short-term result,
right?
This is what happens.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. It's just absolutely, yeah. No, our enemies, and I'm sorry, I don't. Nobody likes to say that they have enemies, but we do have enemies,
right?
And our enemies are not doing that red hot. And we, instead of I'm going to do Russia a big favor. Now is not the time to be doing Russia big favors. Now is the time to be turning the screws.
Mm-hmm.
This, I've said it before, I will say it again. This is Trump's war to lose.
Yep.
Ukraine, absolutely, the West absolutely can win this war. And hopefully Russia will finally do the hard reforms that they need to do. But that's for them to decide.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, we need to fixate on this being the line in the sand and following through on our promises to Ukraine and doing the right thing. I mean, we signed the Budapest agreement. We committed that if they gave up their nukes, we would observe, and everybody parses it out now. But at the end of the day, the reason why the Ukrainians gave up their nukes is because we told them, because they knew who their neighbors were, that we would guarantee
their safety,
their sovereignty and their borders, and we haven't.
Yep.
We've already, the one thing that came out of that Lex Friedman interview with Zelensky was Zelensky being, God, it was was Zelensky being frank about it. He was like, it was shit. It wasn't worth the paper it was written on. Right. You guys betrayed us. And it's not too late for us to do the right thing. They can 100% win this war. 100%. There's not a doubt in my mind but they can win this war with the parameters that I've given. I mean, they might lose Donbass. They might not get back Mariupol. They might not get back Crimea. But they will be a sovereign country with Kiev as its capital and one of the world's great trading ports on the Black Sea. And they will deny Russia its imperial designs. And that will be devastating for Moscow. That will be devastating for Vladimir Putin.
Well,
So we can win, but it's his to lose. And that, I think, might be the only way to pressure him, is to say, you don't want to be a loser now, do you, Donald? I mean, we can win this war.
And you're now fighting for the side with the least to offer the country. What after this is all over, the fuck do we get from Russia except maybe an oil competitor in the world, right? That might be it. It's the only thing we get is like another oil country goes back online that competes with us for oil, sales, right? But if Ukraine is a sovereign country, we have a strategic partner in Europe that we helped shore up and protect, that supplies not just competes with us for
and they won't
oil.
forget.
Has tons of foodstuffs, is a technological powerhouse, is a military ally. Like there's a bunch of, is a cultural ally because their democracy is much more aligned with how we want to operate and now they want to operate versus how Russia wants to operate things. We don't want a Brittany Griner punishing legal system to spread throughout Europe or the United States as much as Trump might act like he does. He absolutely doesn't. And trust. It's not long before Trump, I think, starts to realize, or at least the people around him realize, that there's more to be gained from Ukraine's success than Russia's success, period. And there's not the idea of like Trump Tower Moscow, that ship has sailed.
Yeah, and Musk, his connections
Right.
to Russia has me troubled because Musk might get some benefit over Russia succeeding here, but America won't. You're
Right.
absolutely right. America,
Even yet another reason why Trump might start getting, suspicious about it, because he started doubting Musk a lot lately. And if it looks like Trump and everybody around him starting to do this kind of calculation, and here comes Musk again going, hey, leave Russia alone, it might be yet another reason why Trump can make himself look clean, cover his own ass, remedy some of the worst aspects of his legacy, all those kind of things, while making money in the future for his family and his, and his lineage and all that kind of shit, by making an actual friend instead of, just reattaching your puppet strings every fucking 4 years.
yeah. Yeah, apparently he went to the general that he's put in charge of kind of heading up negotiations, General Keith Kellogg.
Mm-hmm.
And I know people who know him. I don't know him personally. I've never met him, but I know people who know him, and they say he genuinely is a pretty hawkish when it comes to Russia.
Yeah.
Which is what we need. We need a guy to be hawkish on Russia.
Well,
Again,
so is
now
Rubio.
is not the time to.
That was the other thing.
And Rubio, and when he wants to be Lindsey,
Right.
Lindsey Graham, when he wants to be, when he's not being a sycophant.
Yeah, but he literally like Lindsey Graham's outside of the equation. He's still just, he's a senator and he's close to Trump. But Marco Rubio is now his Secretary of State. He has been sworn in, and Marco Rubio is the only person I've heard in government that's as articulated a hawk about the Chinese government as I am, because he's. Like, his big fear is, and he's been paranoid about this for a very long time, and rightly so, is China's being embedded in our electrical grid and our communication systems. And that we've seen through the TP-Link malware cracks and all these other things that, that China is setting up a situation where it can pull the plug on the electrical grid or pull the plug on the Panama Canal or those kind of things through subtler means than firing missiles. And they've decided that instead of diplomacy, which for some reason they just decided at some point doesn't or can't work, because we're not going to, I don't know, whether it's Trump or whether it's the perception about the theft of intellectual property, America's just slowly caught on to the fact that the Chinese government and business alliance was undermining not only our national security interests, but our economic interests as well. And again, never mind that fucking slave cotton. We don't need it, and we're not going to participate in that. And so if they recognize, well, we're not going to stop doing that. China's not going to stop doing that. So what do? How do they attack the United States? Well, they could blow shit up, or they could drag communication cables and put malware in software and in 5G towers that have Huawei equipment in them, which they do in other countries that they need to control. They get those contracts, and then they basically shut off the phones if they want to in that area. And that's a genuine worry. He brought that up. Rubio brought that up at his hearing. And then same thing with Russia. They were like, he's really clear that Putin's a gangster. It's a kleptocracy. And he wasn't mincing words about it. And Trump put him in that position. So either he thinks of him as John Bolton.
Gabbard scares the hell out of me. Scares the hell out of me because she parrots word for word. Victoria Nuland was a CIA operative on Maidan, and the CIA did the Maidan uprising, and poor Russia is being attacked and threatened by NATO, and all the rest of it. So she concerns me greatly. But this Keith Kellogg fella is apparently pretty hawkish on Russia, again, as I believe we should be currently.
Right.
But even I see him already being put up for the chopping block. because apparently Trump has publicly, or it's been made public, that that he's given him, in the war within 100 days. That's not going to happen. This war
Right.
is not going to end in 100 days.
Well, and
So
again, he's the deal maker.
Keith
No,
Kellogg can't win.
no, and Trump is the deal maker. He can't pawn this off on Kellogg and then blame him. And again, I've told people before
I suspect he might try.
yes, but it won't work. And it's and again, he's starting to get pushback all over the place from from people about, hey, it's been more than 24 hours, right? And he apparently does,
right.
which is amazing. He apparently does not know that noon to noon, day after day, is 24 hours. He thinks it's
never
12.
going to be done in 24 hours. It's the wounds are too deep. The history is too bloody,
Right.
and it stretches back centuries. And there are lots of things to be negotiated about and worked out in detail. This is not going to be, Putin, Zelensky, and Trump get into a smoke-filled room and they make a decision, and then the war is over. No, they might initiate some sort of peace process, but this is going to have to be drawn out, and like every village is how you do. Who gets to keep this village? Who gets to keep that village? Well, the Russians really didn't take it, but they claim it. So it's going to have to go bit by bit by bit. And then what reassurances do the Ukrainians get that you won't just come back in 5 or 10 years? You lick your wounds and you come back, and you're already on the river. So all you have to do is do a mass attack to get across the other side of the river and then continue your attacks. And will Russia Russia have breaks treaties regularly? So there's all that. And then meanwhile, this is something we have to talk about, and I know we're close to the end of the hour here.
Yeah.
But it's also worth mentioning that right now, currently in Russia, there are serious concerns that there's about to be a run on the banks. That Moscow is going to freeze accounts because of the desperation that they find themselves in. They're going to start freezing individual citizens' bank accounts, and this fear, they're desperate to tamp it down, but they wouldn't be trying to tamp it down if it wasn't real, right? You don't insert that kind of language into your state-controlled media,
right,
if there isn't already a concern that at any second these motherfuckers are going to bolt and take every dime out of their bank accounts
already.
and shove it under the bank.
Right. And how do you not? Once that happens, how do you not? Now, again, we've seen this happen before in the early part of the war, like a year in, that like the oligarchs kept falling out of windows or ended up, suiciding their entire families, while magically their entire fortune goes right into Vladimir Putin's pocket. Like, that's some scary shit. Like, everything that people are worried about Trump and his runaway power, and oh my God, he might, send SEAL Team 6 to kill people or whatever. I like a lot of Americans, don't think he'll follow through with a lot of that shit, and he just likes the idea of being able to saber rattle a lot, just to look like a macho moron. Putin does it though, on the regular, and it is part, and so does Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping started cribbing. Like about a year and a half ago, Xi Jinping started cribbing largely from Putin's thing, where they were just grabbing people at the conference of the CCP and walking them out, never to be seen again. Mm-hmm. Just fucking lifting these dudes up and walking them to the door, and not for being spies, just for being insufficiently loyal to the party. They do a thing where they have votes. Like we always talk about how like fucking ridiculous some of our Congress people are when they go to the floor and they talk. And they give their reasons, like fucking Kennedy from Louisiana, or Mississippi, wherever Missiltucky, wherever the fuck he's from, who's like, this aardvark, can't chew its nuts off in wintertime without somebody coming after it. And I've looked at these numbers upside down 6 weeks Sunday. I say, stop it, son. Like, as dumb as that is, you can do it.
He's a road scholar.
He is. That's right. You can come down to the floor and you can say whatever the fuck you want. That's fine. But in China, when they take a vote of the entire CCP, at the party gatherings, there's a guy that stands at the end of every row section, and their job is to announce whether anybody in this section dissents with what Xi Jinping wants to do. So Xi Jinping says, "We will do this. So how do you vote? Are there any dissenting votes?" And this guy stands up at the end of every block of people and goes, "Mayo," which means technically, literally means don't have. It means if he stood up and said, "Yo," that would mean we have a dissenter. Mayo means we do not have a dissenter. And it's just a fucking rubber stamp exercise. No one has ever stood up at any of these gatherings and said, "Yo, fuck that."
Yeah.
And anybody who's even thinking about doing it gets escorted out before that happens.
Yeah, this is how these systems work. I mean, if suddenly people started falling out of windows in the United States, captains of industry,
Yeah.
it would not go unnoticed. So we're not going down that road.
No.
I don't think he can do it, Trump. I just don't. Well, anyhow, we will see how these 4 years go. We're just starting down the road. But as far as my little patch of the world is concerned, and the thing that concerns me most, and which has me here in a war zone, and dealing with all the shit that I deal with, being in Ukraine, this isn't fun for me.
Right.
But it's important. It's really fucking important. And we got to win this war. And we totally can win this war. We can kick the shit out of the Russians. The Ukrainians will do it. Not because they, not solely, let me say, because they want to save Western civilization, but it's mutually beneficial, and they're our allies and our friends.
Yeah.
And we should absolutely stop the Russians here, because if they don't get stopped here, they will continue to do shit. They will be, and it doesn't mean that tanks will be running, will be rolling on Piccadilly Circus,
right,
or Russian fighter bombers will be at Charles de Gaulle Airport. But they can. What will happen is if they are reinvigorated and they are successful here, all the resources that you mentioned, including population, but they will feel invigorated. They will feel empowered, and they will have access to means to destabilize all kinds of swaths of Eastern Europe. I mean, look what they're already doing with Orban and the guy in Slovenia there, whose name escapes you at the moment.
Yeah.
But they will not stop with Ukraine. They will undermine.
They can't afford to.
No, they can't afford to. You're right. But we have them in a hold. We've got them in a kind of we've wrestled them into Nelson. A bind.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got them in a full, or at least a half
arm bar.
Now we can get them into a full Nelson.
Yeah.
We absolutely can do this. I am convinced that we can do this. The Ukrainians the armed forces are not going to collapse. Yes, currently Russia is taking territory, but they're doing it in, minuscule amounts of ground that they're taking, and they're paying massive prices for it. I don't think Putin can do a third, or sure as hell's not going to be able to do a fourth mobilization.
No. Nope.
And that's what he's going to need to do those two objectives, which I keep fixating on, of Odessa and Kiev. Odessa for the sea, Kiev for the government and the control of Ukraine and the destruction of Ukraine as an independent sovereign body. If he can't do those two things, everything else is just it's just for show. It's just for show.
And we didn't even talk about the fact that Ukrainians still have Kursk to bargain with. They've repelled there's been these enormous attacks the Russians have made trying to retake Kursk, and they've all failed miserably.
Yeah. Thanks in no small part to the Bradley.
Yes,
My favorite fighting vehicle.
That's right.
The Bradley.
So
I'm alive today because of one.
that's
So
right, and we're
no,
glad that you
look,
are.
fuck the Russians. Fuck
Yeah,
the Russians.
yeah, so
Absolutely,
gross.
100% can be beaten here.
Yeah.
It is Trump's war to lose.
Mm-hmm.
So
And he's going to
let the
blame
Ukrainians do what they
everybody.
do.
He's going to blame
Yeah,
everybody for not bringing it to a close, but himself. And then
yeah.
ultimately, it's going to hang around his fucking neck like an albatross if he chooses to continue to side with Putin and let this shit drag on and try to protect Russia's interests. Instead of an ally or instead of the U.S.'s. Period. And as much as I agree that Tulsi Gabbard is a danger. I think the biggest concern for her is that she will give classified information to our enemies. That is the primary fear that I have about her, that she will either whisper or openly tell people stuff that will give them an advantage over our State Department and the president because she wants to do it. That is the biggest fear. And Republicans increasingly in the Senate have that same fear. So she and Hegseth are both on shaky ground right now.
I mean, even if Hegseth gets through, I know enough people, and I know enough about how the Pentagon and the armed forces of the United States work. He can be, I mean, it's not great.
No.
But he can be contained.
Yeah.
The chain of command can be, he can be boxed in.
Yeah.
Gabbard scares the shit out of me for just that reason, that she would pass along intel.
Agreed. I've been looking at all of these people, and there are two outcomes that seem the most possible. One is she gets in there and does exactly what we're afraid of. She starts feeding intel, either because Trump wants her to, which is the fucking creepiest, worst possible scenario, or because she does it in spite of him, and he just likes the fact that he's got this, woman who was formerly a Democrat that he can push around or blame if stuff goes sideways.
And he likes that.
Right. But the other issue she has is that if she gets in there and it's business as usual at all, if she, instead of doing all this stuff, instead of feeding all this stuff, she decides it's better for her if she comes across as a jingoistic patriot in this position and decides this is the side my bread is buttered on versus Russia or Syria or any of these things, and that I can turn on these people and they're, Assad has fallen. Putin has very little value now. So fuck them. I'd rather feather my own nest in this process. Maybe Erdogan, maybe some of these other folks get a little too much information from her, but she's not going to give it to Iran and she's not going to give it to China per se, because that's not the alignment. So what if she just is relatively pedestrian in the role? You know who's that's going to piss off? Maggots. MAGA is going to be livid if any of these people are even perceived to be to maintain a sense of normalcy, and she has to maintain a sense of normalcy if she's going to hide this wacky shit we're afraid she's going to do. Right? She'll have to do it that way. If she wants to be this jingoistic, warrior for America and actually be patriotic, like, America first, like they're directing her to do, then she's going to do a lot of the same shit that's been done by the DNIs before her, because it's a very serious role and they don't fuck around. There's very little partisanship in that, right?
And,
and it's going to drive maggots nuts.
Moscow has been as successful as it has been with pushing its narrative into our body politic and into the magosphere.
Yeah.
That there are literally, as we talked at the beginning here with the majors, there are people who are literally pro-Putin, pro-Kremlin, because they have swallowed they've swallowed whole cloth these fucking narratives that have been pushed. I mean, what was tenant media all about? That with the biggest.
It was a money laundering.
I would be surprised
exercise. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, all the Benny Johnsons and the Tim Pools.
Yeah.
That worked. That worked. There are MAGA morons who think that
Russia's an innocent victim.
Russia.
NATO
the Russians the
expansion.
victim, and yeah, that's
Right.
right. They're good Christian people, and good white Christian people, and it's all Ukraine's fault, and we should be supporting the Kremlin
I mean,
and
half of
Russia,
these
not.
assholes,
And
right?
it's
Half of
like
these assholes is like gays are so scary that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. That I mean,
yeah.
you could argue that just
Not recognizing that the Russian Orthodox Church fucking hates evangelicals and Baptists,
right,
and they think they're literally demons.
right.
So fuck yourself
But
with that kind of fucking
again,
talk.
it's this idea that by the time they get around to me, all my enemies will be vanquished, and then maybe they'll be too fat and happy to bug me. That I mean, that's
Yeah.
been the plan. That's it worked on the Mongols. I mean,
Yeah.
for fuck's sake, the Mongols got their ass kicked by by a few sets of crusaders, protecting like a Muslim tribe at one point, because they had beaten up so many people that they were like, this is going to be a fucking cakewalk, and they didn't expect reinforcements, and so a lot of them made peace with the Mongols in the Central Europe, simply by going, just fucking sit over there and eat all the cattle. Leave me the fuck alone. After 50 years of fighting, there's an element to that where there's an expectation that that's how it's going to work out with Russia. It ain't. Russia will not be satisfied. Ruska Mir is a thing. The Russian world, everything that that like they view Hitler as a fucking amateur, and the Chinese specifically who run the CCP, the Han
Putin.
Chinese.
Yeah, to quote Putin, Russia has no borders.
Right.
And he means that in the sense of we are always expanding. We have no
Yeah.
borders.
Yeah. Anybody can be an
Wake the
American, not
fuck up,
anybody can be
America.
Russian. Doesn't work that way.
Yeah, we need to wake up. We need to
Yeah.
we need to wake up, and we really should have done it under the Biden administration. But
I
I
agree.
understand why they didn't, and I understand the fear. I think Biden being a product of his history and his that he really was concerned about escalation.
Mhm.
Well, we gotta put that in the rearview mirror. We gotta put let's now's the time to support Ukraine wholeheartedly and beat the fucking Russians.
Right.
And we can do it.
Yeah.
And Ukraine is willing to fight for us. All we got to do is put weapons in their hands and
Agreed.
support them, and they'll win this war. I mean, they can't take a town of 20,000. You think they're going to take a town built for 1.5 million,
Right.
in Kharkiv or something? No, they're not. They're gonna. They don't. They just don't. If they had the capacity, they would have already done it.
Yeah.
If they had the means to go and take Kharkiv or Odessa or Kiev, they fucking would have done it already.
Yeah.
Right? This is
When
3
they
years
had all
in.
their fighters, when they had all their fighters, all their gear,
Yeah.
and they had a surprise attack and a 6-day plan. If they couldn't do it then, who the fuck thinks it's two and a half years later that this slog?
No, it'll be 3
It'll be
years
3 years.
next
Yeah,
month.
right. Jesus, at the end of the month. That's right.
Yeah.
3 years later, this 6-day war has turned into a fucking slog that's cost them nearly a
And I
million
can
people.
tell you now, everybody who can hear the sound of my voice, I can tell you now, Ukraine is not going to crack.
Right.
Okay, I talk to soldiers regularly, Ukrainian soldiers regularly. They are not in any way, well, I say in any way, they are suffering. It is hard. They have lost people. Everybody knows somebody who has died.
Yeah.
On the line, those guys need reinforcements. They need to be rotated out so that they can, get R&R and then come back. All of these things are true, but I can tell you with assuredness, with like conviction in my heart, there is not going to be an imminent collapse of the Ukrainian armed forces in some sort of rout or some sort of massive spearhead of Russian forces, and we're going to be encircled in Kiev next week. Ain't going to happen. Is not going to happen. If all we have to do is support them, they'll fight the fight because they know what's at stake. So, we shall see. We shall see what happens in 2025. I don't think this war comes to an end this year, sadly. I would love it to.
Right.
unless something unforeseen happens.
Yeah.
Putin falls out of a window, or whatever.
Right.
But
And doesn't bounce.
the most important thing is we cannot withdraw our support, the West,
Yeah.
as a whole. And I don't think the Europeans will, even if Donald Trump is foolish enough to do it. And I
Right.
don't think, for all the reasons you presented, I think it's entirely possible that Trump finds himself in a position where he
Yeah.
has to keep supporting Zelensky.
Yeah. If Zelensky's like, hey, where would you rather have a tower? In Kyiv or in fucking what's left of Moscow? What would you like your guests to be surrounded by? The future or the past? What do you want, and do you want that guy to keep having something over you? We don't care. We just want to live free. And I gotta say, at some point, it already works on paper. Russia is on the shit end of this equation. It has been for a long time. People just didn't realize it until recently, and it took them losing 800,000 fucking soldiers in a 6-day war that lasted 3 years to prove it. But they don't have a lot to give. Ukraine, on the other hand, has shown themselves to be resilient and powerful and driven in the face of this onslaught. And at the same time, breadbasket of Europe, a grain supplier to Africa, and an intellectual and technological
one of the
powerhouse.
world's greatest ports. Odessa is no joke. I've been to Odessa many times.
Yeah.
It is rightfully claimed to be one of the world's greatest ports, and that means supply chain.
Yeah.
Okay, that means if you want to get something from anywhere in the world and get it into Eastern Europe or get it into the Caucasus and further on into maybe Central Asia. If you've got American goods that you want to unload,
Right.
Odessa is the place.
Yeah.
And
what do you want to do? You want to bring them in a truck into Russia, have them stolen and driven out into the middle of the fucking permafrost and switched into a truck and sent to North Korea illegally, like Betsy DeVos's fucking printers went to Iran? Because that's the other choice. And it's lame and it's low res and you can't make a lot of money doing it. And the weird thing is that for all of Trump's meme coin shit, he may have just paid off his debts with that stupid fucking meme coin. And if Trump was worried about money he might have to pay back through Deutsche Bank and these other lenders, and he now doesn't have to worry about that anymore, that this stupid fucking meme coin has given him financial independence from the people that was pulling his strings, what the fuck would you do if you were Vladimir Putin knowing you had this dude in debt to the tune of maybe $1.2 billion that he didn't have, and all of a sudden he's got $6 billion in the bank? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What? And he can renegotiate all of his loans on all of his properties, and it all happened before he went in. Now what? Unless you better have a fucking PP tape. Because the only other reason, then we go into the only other reason Trump would support Vladimir Putin is that he's just as evil and grotesque and rapey and anti-gay and anti-immigrant as Vladimir Putin is, and he very well may be, but will he act on it? With J.D. Vance having an Indian wife, his own daughter, his favorite child, converting to Judaism, all the things that don't play well in that Putin-Russian sandbox that are a reality in Trump's world. So I mean, this dude is Trump is between a rock and a third floor window right now when it comes to his relationship with Vladimir Putin. And if anything eases it up because he doesn't have to worry about paying this fucker back all of a sudden, that's leverage that's gone.
And Zelensky, meanwhile, has got all the aces up his sleeves that he wants.
Right.
When it comes to, I mean, he's
not
right
down.
now. He's at the world. He's getting fawned over at the World Economic Forum right now.
Right. And new German.
There's a lot of goodwill.
And the incoming German representatives are all like, "What the fuck are we doing? Why aren't we supporting you guys? We could get enough oil and gas from there. We don't need as much as, to justify the Nord Stream 2 pipeline in the first fucking place. We could have just gotten it from Ukraine directly and saved ourselves all of this fucking fret over the years." And again, that goes to were some of their leaders, like Trump, tacitly in the pocket of Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping for a good long while. And that's very possible. The question is, what happens when that person gets out from under, And I would love for Trump to watch the last episode of The Penguin, because he's not the Penguin, he's the black kid that works for him. If anybody has seen that, they'll know exactly what I mean. But anyways, we're over time, and I want to thank you for sticking around, Phil.
Yep.
Don't forget,
On the
Edge. Yeah, On the Edge, Phil's show. Check it out. He'll have a new episode this Sunday. It's a big secret. He's not going to tell us. He might hint
Could
at
be
it.
a good guess. Good guess. No, I'll put out a thumbnail Thursday or Friday.
Excellent. All right. And 10th floor.
And then I'll talk to you on Saturday.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, brother. Be safe.
All right,
Take
man.
care of yourself, okay?
Yeah. Here's what it is. All right.
There you go.
Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, Phil Bittner. And I know, sorry, I'm wearing a tank top on the show today, but this is what I was wearing for the show last night. And I literally rolled in. I took a nap in my clothes for like 45 minutes and then got up and ran down here and threw my and turned all my gear on and did a show after driving all night long. I did pull over and sleep for an hour last night. I did have 1 hour last night of sleep in the parking lot of a Love's truck stop, which was a good time. And then where are all the Trump-Putin transcripts? What's buried under Ivana Trump's plaque at Bedminster? Well, it ain't her. How you're going to make yourself sick? Stop it. I'll be all right. I just need to get some sleep now. So I'm going to take a nap, and I'll see you guys this afternoon for the show. We got plenty to cover, including Trump's weird sword dance he was doing, cutting cake. Dude's losing his mind. He's falling apart. It's hilarious. All right. Anyways, much love to you guys. Take care of yourselves and take care of somebody else and take care of the kidney. And if you...
The kidney has a very special place in the heart.
Well, no, it doesn't. Hit that like, everybody. Share the show if you haven't had a chance to lately. Share some of the videos, comment on them, all that fun stuff. And have a beautiful day. And I'll see you guys this afternoon. Regular show, regular time. Here come the credits. All right.